That one piece of advice would be to be ruthlessly creative. Do not stop thinking normal because we're living in abnormal times. And if you are facing adversity, you are facing a shutdown, closure, or whatever, you have to be ruthlessly creative in establishing or getting whatever you want.
Now, how often, and I want to know the story behind it, would you go into a crisis situation, communicate with the team, and set expectations, but at the end of it all, things didn't just go the way as planned, or it wasn't a success, that crisis management or that turnaround that was supposed to have happen didn't come true? And what are the factors that would bring about that kind of a situation?
A lot of crisis never turns out the way you hope it to. Because first of all, fundamentally, people expect you to fix a crisis and take them back to where they started from, which is an unrealistic expectation. Secondly, once you fix that, which is which is crucial, then believe it or not, nobody knows where they're going. Because if you say, look, we'll fix this, we're going to come out of this, like COVID, right? We're going to come out of it. We all know that. We just don't know when. We also don't know what the world's going to look like when we come out of it. You genuinely don't. Will we still have to wear face masks? Will we still have to social distance? What's traveling on a plane going to look like?
Yeah.
Right? So we don't know. So as a result, that you can always use to your benefit. As long as you involve everyone, the team, each and every team member, and delegate some level of task and responsibility so that they all feel that they're doing something to push the crisis away from them. That sense of ownership, that sense of belonging, that sense of that we are united together fighting this crisis is one of the best ways of building teamwork than just having an ordinary weekly meeting or, once a year office party or some rubbish like that. A crisis is one of the most wonderful ways of bringing your team together because now you're going to be closer than you ever were. You're going to rely on everyone else's strength that is not your strength, and everyone gets to show off what they're good at that's going to help them get out of the crisis.
Got it.
And that's when I walk into the when I walk into the boardroom. I said, this is the best thing that could have happened to you guys because you guys are going to be now closer than ever. You're going to rely on each other closer than ever. There's going to be no corporate politics. No one's got any time or patience to be better than the other.
Now,
everyone's out to save themselves by saving each other.
Now, I realize that is something that is fantastic. But in the environment we're in right now, where we can only do it via Zoom, via digital for most companies, would you say that it is still the same, that a crisis would be able to still glue a team better together?
To be honest, I don't think the crisis has happened yet. If you just let me actually explain that. We are still getting used to the idea of working at home, from home, through technology, and we are not sure whether it's going to be temporary or semi-permanent or permanent. So we're still undergoing that phase of change. So it's a different working style, which is not necessarily a crisis. So we have to be very careful when we say, is it, what a crisis is. People are finding new ways of producing the same output just through different means. So that's not necessarily a crisis. That's just a workflow change. The only challenge is, like I tried my computer earlier, my laptop wasn't working. So I had to go to another one. And just figure out the logistics of where can I create an office-like atmosphere in my house, but I'm still expected to produce the work. The advantage is that I can work in my pajamas.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage is I don't have to commute. The disadvantage is that personal camaraderie that I had in the office. Leaving home, getting a breath of fresh air by going into an office has its own charm.
Right.
But we're not in a crisis yet.
Well,
It's actually just a change of workflow.
it,
I don't know
it,
if what do you think?
at least in SEO Hacker, so I could speak for our team. I do agree with you 100%. It is a change of workflow. It could be worse. What this pandemic has brought about is our receivables are not being paid on time because the clients would say, "Oh, our finance team cannot go to the office," or we have to hold some of the checks because we're also not collecting. So that made a little bit of a problem with our organization.
But that's the whole financial chain, this whole supply, the money chain.
Yes.
Everyone is pushing back, and because they are not paying you, then you could tell your vendors that why you can't pay them. So, everyone's pushing back against everyone else. Again, for me, that's more of a workflow symptom.
Right.
It becomes a crisis when they stop paying you and more than one person stops paying you.
Makes sense.
That's the crisis.
Maybe, just maybe, there are some entrepreneurs listening out there or watching out there who are experiencing the pandemic at that level already. I mean, I've seen businesses close shop and
So have I.
right. So many businesses actually have already closed down. And I want to ask you this last question because I know it's getting late out in your place as well. If there's one big piece of advice that you will give to leaders, entrepreneurs, and managers who are out there struggling in this pandemic and consider themselves that they're actually in crisis, what would it be?
That one piece of advice would be to be ruthlessly creative. Do not stop thinking normal, because we're living in abnormal times. And if you are facing adversity, you are facing a shutdown, closure, or whatever, you have to be ruthlessly creative in establishing or getting whatever you want. For example, you have to focus on your negotiation tactics. And a simple negotiation tactic, like, I'll give you an example. My son's at university. I rent him an apartment in New York City. That rent last year used to be $4,000 a month. The rent, the 1 year rent just ended. The lease just ended a couple of months ago. So I spoke to the landlord, and the landlord said, "Well, there are so many people that want to rent and all that." And I said, "Well, that's fine. Then give it to them. We'll move out." He goes, "No, what's your best offer?" So I said, "My best offer is $2,500.
Right.
And he laughed. And I said, "I don't even know what's so funny." I said, "Because if I go," I said, "there are so many people leaving New York City." So eventually we went back and forth, and eventually we settled at $2,800 plus 2 months free rent.
Wow.
So, you have to be ruthlessly creative. And that means negotiating to the very best. I am negotiating with everybody, and I'm saying two things. The first thing is, it's not that I don't want to pay you. It's that I can't pay you yet. So either you have patience based on the past relationship that we've had as a business to business, that I've paid you on time and things like that you just have a little more patience. Or we can cut it right now and you can take me to court, which will take you about a year, 2 years. So, you have to be ruthless and negotiate like crazy.
Yeah.
You won't find any of these tactics in a business book. You're not going to find any of these tactics in Harvard or any MBA course. You've got to be ruthless. Negotiate like crazy. Make sure you read the fine print like crazy. If your business is shutting down, get some great legal advice, get some great financial advice. Pay yourself, protect yourself so that you have something to bounce back with. That's where you got to be ruthless, because once the pandemic's over, then life will start going back to normal, but you're going to have to need something, right, to bounce back with.
That's true. Fantastic.
So now's the time to focus on all the skill sets that they don't teach you and practice them.
So be ruthlessly creative. And some of some of the entrepreneurs and leaders out there might have to negotiate ruthlessly, not just with vendors, but maybe with their own employees as well.
Absolutely, you have to. And it's not something I know that, people are scared to say what I'm saying because it doesn't sound correct or proper. But, you're a businessman. It's kill or be killed. You can only eat what you kill. It sounds nice to be called an entrepreneur, but it's more relevant to be a businessman because a businessman's actually doing the business. My son, called himself an entrepreneur. I said, you know what? That word doesn't mean anything to me. It just means like it's a serial failure. And that's fine. But at some point, you have to go from an entrepreneur to an enterprise where there is an exchange of value with what you are creating or producing and where someone is consuming what you create or produce. And they're prepared to give you value because what you give them is of value, so they give you money in return. That's value. So, be ambitious and stop being an entrepreneur, but be an enterprise where there's a transaction involved. And then my thing with people who are really struggling with business or things like that is start calling up everybody, your banks, your electricity company, your water company, and you'll actually be surprised at how lenient people are being at this moment. The standard leniency at the moment for you to pay your bills is 3 months. All these call centers already have it. They're not going to say it to you because they don't want to make their own cash flow suffer, right? But if you provide a proper conversation or a proper negotiation with them, they automatically are empowered to give you 3 months. Now, 2.5 months down the line, you can call them and say, hey, nothing's improved. So I still need a little bit more time. Could you please give me a little more time?
It's amazing.
They will still say yes.
It's amazing.
I told my landlord, I said, you know what? If you increase the rent, you're not going to get nobody in their right mind is going to rent this place.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, I'm going to tell the media about it. That during the pandemic, during one of America's worst crises, there was one landlord out there who wanted to increase the rent of these poor students. I said, imagine that name going down in the press. They would just love that story. So he panicked. So that's where you ruthlessly negotiate.
Sounds pretty ruthless to me.
But it was a true story. I mean, in this pandemic, are you crazy? You want to increase the rent? People are trying to get out and leave New York. I said to him, both of us know that you're not going to increase the rent. But the very fact that you mention it, you're insulting my whatever intelligence I have. And I find that I am insulted that, you would think I'm so stupid.
That's true.
So start calling everyone that you owe money to, all your water supplier, your electricity, everything, even your phone company, your mobile phone, 3 months easy.
So you have given us tons of valuable advice, and unfortunately that is the only time we have with you, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. You have to get your rest. You're going to get up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. So before I let you go, I'm going to ask the last question. Where can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you and contact you?
It's www.vippjaswal.com. If you're putting this out, then you could put my website there too.
Definitely. It's going to be in the show notes. So you go to the website, leadershipstack.com. This episode is going to have the show notes. His link's going to be there. And if you're watching on YouTube, just scroll down a little bit on the description section. And his website is going to be on the description section, linked right there for you. Well, Vipp, thank you so much for your time and your insights. We are better for it.
Thank you, Sean. It's been an honor being with you on the show.